How am I? That's a great question, and it's a big question. But overall, I'm great. You know, the sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. It's a new day. It's with a new day with so much potential. So I'm doing great. Thank you.
Oh my God! Get on the floor now! Get on the floor!
Why did you help us?
If we want respect, we have to behave respectfully.
You're not like other girls. Something special about you.
My name is Tekahenthakhwa.
Beans is her nickname. Her Mohawk name is Tekahenthakhwa. She is 12 years old. She's a young Mohawk girl growing up in the Kahnawake Mohawk community. She is shy. She's creative. She's very sensitive. She's still very much a child. And she's entering that very difficult period where you pass childhood and you begin to realize what the world is really about. And we witness that journey for her. What I told Gawandio in the beginning of the whole process in regards to her character, it really started with her reading the script. I think all of those details need to be in the script because they ultimately need to be on screen as well. So that's the starting point. And after she read the script, including her parents as well, we had multiple conversations about the story as a whole, but also about her character. But I will say that Gawandio, being a young Mohawk woman herself, really understood who this character was. And it was more on a day-to-day that we would speak about the character in particular, or the situation that we were about to film, and where is her character emotionally situated in those moments. That it was more of an ongoing discussion as opposed to just one discussion that we had about the character. As a survivor of the Oka crisis myself, I was 12 years old when I lived through it. And it's an event that has profoundly shaped me, both good and bad. And in my journey to understand what happened that summer and its effects on me, I've definitely been looking at the Oka crisis throughout my work. So my early documentary work touched upon it. I watched all of the archival footage from that time 2 times over. When I was 12 years old, I also wanted to become a filmmaker. And so even at that early age, it was always this big dream to one day tell the story of the Oka crisis through the point of view of a child, because that is very much the way I lived it. And it had such devastating effects on me. This film is really 30 years in the making for me, from the very beginning of both living it and the desire to tell the story. And the creation process itself took around 10 years. So the film is coming out now, but it was never planned to come out now. It took 30 years from the beginning of the dream. It took around 10 years from the creative process when the creative process began. It's a long time, but I do feel intrinsically that this is the right time for the film to come out. I do feel with the global reckoning that we have experienced over the last year, that Canadians and the world are now more open to receiving a story like this and hopefully allowing it to make a difference in their lives. That is my big hope. In regards to my personal experience and how much was integrated into the film is very much inspired by true events, but it's not a straight autobiography at all. The emotional journey that Beans goes on in her coming of age journey, that is all very much connected and pulled from my own coming of age. And many of the scenes that the character is in are scenes that I experienced myself, but I may have changed them slightly for the film. And there are many historical recreations that I was not at personally. I was not at all of these events, but these events all did happen. And so it was my creative choice to put my character there so that the audience could really experience the entire story. And I will say this, those events that happened, I may not have been at all of them personally, but the ramifications of these events, they stretched far and wide. So you didn't have to be at one of these horrible race riots to then feel the ramifications of them afterwards. And that's the crux of intergenerational trauma. That obviously is one of the scenes that I actually lived through, and the scene where the crowd throws rocks at women, children, and elders in that caravan of cars. I was a part of that myself, and it was really important to me to put the audience in the car with me and my family and to experience it the way we experienced it. It was a really hard scene to write. It was a really hard scene to film, but I'm really glad that it's out there, that Canadians and Quebecers in particular have to bear witness to that horrible moment, and we should never forget it, and we should make sure that it never happens again. I didn't have any formal meetings with anyone. I didn't have any sort of formal research, because really the last 30 years for me has been all about that. I've read everything written. I've seen all of the films, the documentary films out there. I've discussed the Oka crisis with friends and families throughout the years in the process of my documentaries. And so all of that was already inside me. And the film is very much a story about a 12-year-old girl, the coming of age of a 12-year-old girl. It's not the story of the Oka crisis. I didn't feel that it was my job to make sure I told every facet of the Oka crisis. It is a massive historical event. That's not what the film does. It's a backdrop.
They were this close to calling the cops. You want to go to juvie? Instead of Queen Heights?
She started it.
I'm sorry, what? Do you understand what is at stake here? If they hate us, we suffer. Our people suffer. And tonight you made more people hate us. And rightfully so. You behaved just as badly as they did.
She deserved it! They all do!
Oh, don't you scream at me! That is not how I raised you. You are better than this. We are better than this. Pack your stuff so we can get the hell out of here before they change their minds and they lock you up.
I'm not going to that stupid school either!
The way I experienced it as a 12-year-old, there are many things I didn't know what was going on. And so that was definitely the experience that I wanted people to have as they watch the film. They are experiencing it as a child experienced it. Of course, there are these moments in the film where I do use archival footage, and that is to round out the story and provide context, and also to make sure people know that this really did happen. And the fictional scenes you see that are very disturbing and very ugly, I don't want you to be able to dismiss those scenes and think that, oh, she's exaggerating. Oh, I'm sure that didn't happen. Oh, I'm sure that couldn't have happened. The archival moments for me are to ground it in that reality and to make sure you know that, yes, it was really this ugly. And I am not exaggerating in the fictional moments. So to get back to the original question, there was never any sort of formal research period in the making of this, because all of that information is out there. And I've also been absorbing it and analyzing it. And trying to heal from it over the last 30 years. In terms of overcoming the terrible trauma of that summer, how did I do that in order to become the person that I am? I would say that that's still that's still a work in progress. I'm still on the road to healing, but making this film is a big piece of that. When I think back to that little girl, what she really needed was to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. Because if that was in place, I'd like to believe that many of the events of that summer would not have happened. And so for me, putting this film out there where she is seen, she is heard, and I very much hope she is understood by the end, and compassion is built and bridges are built. The big hope is that events like this never happen again. Indigenous children don't have coming of age stories like this ever again. And by putting this story out there, I'm no longer that powerless little girl. I have a voice, I have a platform, and I'm using it to be heard, to be seen, and I hope to be understood. So that is a big part of the healing. I will also say that after the trauma of the Oka crisis, every sense of safety and self-worth was shattered that summer. And I did go into a very dark adolescence. That day that those rocks were thrown at me and my family, that's the day that I learned to hate as well. And I was so angry, and all of that lived inside me, and it was tearing me apart. The one way that I was able to emerge from that darkness was to channel that anger into purpose, into motivation. So for the longest time, my goal was to prove those people wrong, that I have worth, and it was not okay to throw rocks at me. So it's been my driving force for so long to pursue my dreams. And every time I've fallen on my face to get right back up, because they cannot be right. And they are not right, and they are wrong. Because here I am. And we are all out in the world, resilient and thriving and working so hard to overcome all of this colonial oppression that has been a part of our lives for far too long. So that's my answer to that question. So it's true that in MOHAWK Girls, the documentary, which was my first feature film as a director, you see me as a teenager in that film, in archival moments that I use. I've never liked being on camera. And those moments that you see in MOHAWK Girls, I had to dig through hours and hours and hours of footage that I shot as a young teenager of my friends, of my family. I wanted to be a filmmaker since I was 12 years old. So I was always filming, and very rarely was the camera on me. And it was usually when I had a friend say, "Give me that, I want to try it." So I had to comb through lots of footage to find those moments. And then when I did see those moments, it was excruciating. I'm very rarely on camera, but I've always loved being behind the camera. I've always loved seeing the world through a lens and visualizing how a story could unfold through visuals, through audio. I like to say I've been a director for 30 years because I wanted to be a filmmaker since I was 12. And at that moment, I started writing scripts. I got my first video camera a year later as the best Christmas present ever. And I was directing the neighborhood children in all of my productions. And for years, we made horror movies. So for years, I was making the neighborhood kids, kill each other. That's where it all began. In terms of what's coming up, I have a number of projects that I'm really excited about. I have another feature that I've been writing. I've been writing for around 5 years. I have a television show that I'm in development on, and I just recently booked to direct on a television show, a big television show coming to Montreal that I'm really excited about as well. So it's a busy and very exciting time.